will cover information on the age of absolutism, section 2 of your typed outline. So as you can see here, make sure you are using this information when you are taking notes by watching the PowerPoint recordings. So you can see the focus is going to be on France, and it is these 2 pages for Roman numeral 2. When we look at France during the age of absolutism, there is no question that they are going to have absolute rulers. So first we need to know the family that was ruling France at the time of absolutism. And that family was the Bourbons. They had no obstacles to complete power. So they could do anything that they wanted to. There was no one to stop them. Now, there is one group that I need to mention called the Estates General. So you have a little bit of information. Let me show you where. Right here, right before we go to A, I want you to write down Estates General, and I'm going to repeat a couple times what I want you to know about the Estates General. So what you can write down is that it is the French representative body. French representative body with no power. French representative body with no power over the king. No power over the king. And then you also might want to add that it is an advisory group. Okay, it's an advisory group to the king. So again, they don't have any decision-making abilities. Okay, they're simply advising the king on what he should do. And y'all, this group has been around way before absolutism. You can go back to the Middle Ages and have the Estates General. So it's really just there to make it look like the people have some say in decisions that are made. But really, the king can either get advice from this group or not get advice. He can basically make all the decisions on his own without advice from anybody. Okay? So that's why I said this group doesn't have any power. So remember that. Okay, next, we'll take a look at the first Bourbon ruler of France, and that is King Henry IV. So now you're on your little a underneath number 1. So first Bourbon ruler of France was King Henry IV. We know that because of his religion, he will be very unpopular in France because he is a Protestant living in a very Catholic country. Okay, we don't go over the Protestant Reformation in here. You do that in middle school, or if you take European history as a senior, we talk about it. But just know that when the Protestant Reformation took place, a lot of people switched from being Catholic to Protestant, and he is one of them. But that's going to cause some issues because he's in a very Catholic country, but he wants to practice Protestant beliefs. Well, he's going to make a decision about this. It says on your little 1 underneath A that he later converted to Catholicism and stated the quote, "Paris is worth a mass." Think about what that might mean before I tell you. Mass is the word that the Catholics use for their service. Paris is the capital of France. So think about what Henry IV is telling the people. He is willing to go to a Catholic mass if that's what it takes for the people of Paris to accept him as their king. Okay? So again, you might want to jot that down, what that meaning of the quote is. He's willing to go to a Catholic mass if that's what it takes to get the people of Paris to accept him as their king. Now, secretly, he will practice Protestantism, okay? But when he's in the public eye, he is going to the Catholic Church. He is worshiping at that church. again, so that he has the people on his side. Okay? The last thing you want are the people to rebel against you, and religion was a big reason for wars at this time. Believe me, many wars were fought because of religion. Now, speaking of fighting over religious reasons, the last thing Henry IV wanted were people in France to continue fighting over religious differences, because he actually came to power following some major religious conflict that had been going on. So he wants to try to make sure that there's religious peace among Catholics and Protestants in France. So what he did was issue the Edict of Nantes. This is on your little 2. The Edict of Nantes. Again, we're still under A, but you've got like a little 2. Edict is just simply an order by the king. Nantes is the city in France where this was issued. This will grant the freedom of worship for all Protestants. And remember, he's doing this to keep Catholics and Protestants from killing each other. Okay? He lived through those times and doesn't want to see it happen under his rule as the French king. So again, it's called the Edict of Nantes. Very important document. Now, not everybody agreed with his ideas. Specifically, there was a monk who had some suspicions that he was still Protestant. Okay? Look what he's doing. If he truly was a converted Catholic, would he have given Protestants this freedom of worship? So, unfortunately, this extreme monk will take measures into his own hands and will stab Henry IV to his death. Again, not convinced that this king of France was truly Catholic. So Henry IV was not expected to die when he did. He had been king for 21 years, and then this unexpected death is going to throw his son into a position where he will be the next king of France. Now, Henry IV's son was only 10 years old at the time of his father's death. His name is Louis. And so let me explain to you what happens when a young boy ends up becoming the king. You have appointed to him what's called a regency, Regency. And in the beginning, his mother will serve as his regent until they can find someone more qualified for the job. So what the job of a regent is to mold this young boy king into someone who will be, of course, capable of ruling on his own, as a king. So at first, Louis's mom will serve as his regent, and then the job will be given to Cardinal Richelieu. Now remember, a cardinal is a top leader in the Catholic Church. Remember, we said France is very Catholic, so this shouldn't surprise you that the king's regent, basically his mentor, is a cardinal, and that man is named Richelieu. You should be finished with the little 4 under A finally, and now we're going to move to number 2, where we'll go over more information about Richelieu. If you look at number 2, it says French absolutism owes credit to, of course, you see the answer is Cardinal Richelieu. And then go ahead and jot down that Richelieu is Louis XIII's chief minister and regent. So this man is going to be completely dedicated to Louis XIII. Now remember, Louis XIII was very young at the time of being king. So when we talk about who is really making the decisions at this time for France, it's going to be Richelieu. Okay, so make no mistake, Richelieu is the man that people will listen to, because he is, of course, ruling on behalf of Louis XIII. Richelieu will set two goals to achieve, and this is on your number 3. First goal, make Louis XIII the most powerful man in France. More about that in a minute. Goal number 2, make France the most powerful nation in Europe. Okay? So make Louis XIII the most powerful man in France, and then make France the most powerful nation in Europe. Two very challenging goals that Richelieu has set for himself. Now, back to the first one, making Louis XIII the most powerful man in France. Isn't the king already the most powerful man in France? Well, actually, no, because there are groups of people called nobles. And the nobles have money, they have a lot of land, and they've got some power. And if you get enough nobles together who don't like the king, then that is trouble for a king, no matter what age the king is. And Richelieu knows that there are powerful nobles in France that could definitely cause a problem. So what he did on your number 4 was he targeted the French nobility. And we'll talk specifically about, what he did to try and reduce their power so that the king of France would have more power. He also targeted a group of French Huguenots. So let me start with them and what a Huguenot is. So underneath number 4 on your typed outline, I'm going to explain this information about the Huguenots and the nobility that Richelieu was targeting. Okay, so first let's start with the Huguenots and make sure you write this down. A Huguenot was a Calvinist, which basically means it's a branch of Protestantism. And remember, France was very Catholic at this time. So according to Richelieu, if you're Protestant, you are considered a threat because he wants to make sure France remains as Catholic, as much of Catholic as possible. So again, a Huguenot is basically a Calvinist. Again, we don't go over the Protestant Reformation, but John Calvin established the Calvinist Church all the way in Geneva, Switzerland, and those people who wanted to spread Calvinism, some of them went to France. And so these are people who follow the teachings of John Calvin, which again is a branch of Protestantism. Okay? That's probably more than you really need to know. But again, I just wanted to explain to you what a Huguenot is. The Huguenots who were found not loyal to the king. Okay, so again, you're writing this part down. Huguenots that were found not to be loyal to the king had their city walls torn down. So Richelieu meant business when it came to the Huguenots. He would basically figure out who was not loyal to the king and have their city walls torn down so that they basically had no defense whatsoever. And remember, I told you that there had been religious wars and we had Catholics and Protestants fighting each other. And the Protestants had built walls, around their cities for protection. And now Richelieu is saying, look, if I find out you're not loyal to this king, your city walls are coming down. There's nowhere for you to hide. Now, how did he target the French nobility? Any noble who was found not loyal to the king had their castles torn down. So again, he's trying to send that message to the French nobility. Look, if I find out you're not loyal to Louis XIII, then you're not going to have anywhere to hide because your castles are going to be torn down and I will find you. So you better believe the French nobility and the French Huguenots were walking on eggshells. I mean, Richelieu was constantly, watching and monitoring these groups. Now on your number 5, we're going to take a look at a system that Richelieu put in place with mainly the intention of limiting the power of these French nobles. So start writing this down about the Intendant system. Since I am running out of space and time on this video, I'm going to go ahead and stop this one and I'll pick up with more information about the Intendant system.